Hello, Professor Byron Sharp.
Hello.
Hello.
It's lovely to be here.
Yeah, well, we're virtual. Where are you dialing in from?
I'm from Italy today, yeah, and you're in the Netherlands, yeah?
Amsterdam based, so
Amsterdam, yeah.
the Netherlands.
So we're not too far.
No, no,
In
no.
Au- in Australian terms, we're very close.
Yeah, well, it's still a hour's drive or more, I think, from Amsterdam. So
Okay,
yeah,
that's then.
going to Italy is taking a flight and sometimes taking a car. Um,
Well, from Adelaide, it's people do drive. It's like an 8-hour drive to Melbourne. People will drive that.
wow, yeah, yeah, yeah. But you spend most of the time around this zone, I understood, in Europe this month.
I do, yes, yeah. It's been. I think this is the sixth different language zone I've been in.
Wow, 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 okay. Well, we try to keep it simple here with the languages. First of all, thank you very much for doing the interview. Um, when I was writing down the questions, I wondered, okay, what actually made you decide going from, I think it was Dun and Bradstreet to the Ehrenberg-Bass,
Yes.
very long time ago.
Oh, well, it wasn't really a sort of serendipity. There was no Ehrenberg-Bass Institute then. So I fell into academia. I was at Dun and Bradstreet, and I was asked to do, I think just one tutorial in the evening. And I guess that led to a few more tutorials. It led to a job as a period as marketing manager for the university's consulting arm. And that was quite pivotal because that taught me, that made me get in my car and go and visit these engineers and chemists and researchers that I didn't know anything about, but I knew that they were generating revenue for us. And so, that's what you do as a marketing festival. You look at the books and go, where's the money coming from? And it wasn't the business school. It was places like that. And that was quite a eye-opening, made me realize the world is desperate for answers. There's so much unknown in the world. And so big corporations, and they're very happy to come to a university and pay for answers for unknown things. And that made me think, well, we need to do research in the business school. And then I fell in and started my first research degree, and I encouraged a few other crazy people to come join me, and it just kept snowballing from that. And now we have the Ehrenberg-Bass Institute.
It's a fairly big snowball, right, at the moment.
Yeah, but it wasn't an overnight success.
No, but I think it's a very dominant factor in our industry. Was there one sort of aha moment where you were doing this and thought, okay, we need more of, let's say, this evidence-based approach in marketing? Or was that something that came along the way?
Yeah, I mean, I was a young academic. I started by, when I did my master's, I think, I remember hours slaving over photocopying everything out of the top journals that had basically the word brand in the title. I suppose I started to realize there was a lot of pseudo-science, a lot of what Andrew Ehrenberg used to call sonking, ONK, the scientification of non-knowledge. A better way of putting it is, you put on a white coat and a stethoscope. You try to look very scientific, and if you're a masochist and actually want to go and read some of the top marketing journals, you tend to notice incredible torturing of data with very complex statistical models, or ridiculously long words and amazing jargon. There's two schools. One sort of comes from humanities, one comes from more engineering statistics side, but both of them are doing the same thing. It's dressing it up to make it look so complicated.
Yeah.
And it's almost the sort of lesser, the more trivial you're finding, the more you have to do that.
Yeah. Dress it up. Yeah.
Whereas back in the day, you may have heard this thing, a letter to nature, which was when people like, Watson and Crick, discovered the double helix for DNA. They write a letter to nature. And the idea is, because it's so important what you found, you quickly tell people, and it's big and important, so you don't have to dress it up. you know, like I've reached the North Pole, ta-da,
Yeah,
or whatever.
might be interesting to write about this.
Yeah. Whereas we glorify style over substance. We so if you talk to academics, they'll tell you about how they've spent 5 years getting this 45-page journal article into a journal, and then you go, but it's not that important. Why would you put that much work into it?
Yeah, I think it's a big.
So I was suspicious of that, and yeah. So what actually happened is I was teaching a philosophy of science class, which talked about the importance of science is finding regular findings that keep repeating, and to do that you find something and then you need to test it in new conditions. Try to think of what things might affect this. Whether you're trying to find a scientific law, something that keeps on repeating. And a colleague said, you should found a journal about replications. It would be really well cited. And I thought, yeah, and journals are all going to go online. So I did. And he was totally wrong. It never became a big journal. It wasn't well cited. But it did lead me to ask Andrew Ehrenberg to join the editorial board. And that was my introduction to Andrew, and sort of the rest is history. Then, worked with him for a number of years. And, because I knew we were a kindred spirit of wanting to, find non-trivial findings. I mean, if you find something that keeps repeating in all sorts of different conditions, almost no matter what that is, it's pretty weird, right? It's got to mean something. It might take you 10 years to work out what it means, but that's really exciting. That's pretty big.
I think I think Neil deGrasse Tyson has a very good analogy for it. He basically says if science is like a circle, and on the edge of the circle there are scientists trying to make the circle a little bit bigger every time they find something, and the more generalizable it is, the bigger the steps of the increasing size of the circle are. And I think Andrew Ehrenberg said that all the data are wrong, but some are very useful. And
I'm not sure that was Andrew. There's an old quote. Yeah, all models are wrong. Because of course they have to be. A model airplane we look at and go, oh, it's an airplane. Yeah, well, it's not.
Abstraction.
There's no. If you look inside, there's no seatbelts and things that it's. We've whittled it down to a few core things. Because you have to. That's what science is about, simplifying, so that we can see the big picture. And so Andrew made a very substantial contribution that people I don't think, particularly maybe in marketing, don't appreciate. But he pointed out that a lot of modern statistics are almost anti-science. That they are trying to take this set of data and create a one-off model on this one set of data, and just like that's not science. Science is about trying to create a model that'll fit 100, 1,000, 10,000 data sets. And he wrote it. I don't think it made him very popular saying that. Although he was elected to the fellow of the Royal Statistical Society, so eventually some people got it, what he was saying.
I was rereading Ogilvy's on advertising a couple of weeks ago, and I think he's together with Gallup. I think he's one of the few people actually being mentioned as, at least in this book, is written somewhere in the 50s, begin 60s, I think, as a influence, at least in terms of Ogilvy, was very research oriented, and his name pops up. So that was, I think he was there very early in that sense.
Yeah, when David Ogilvy once said Andrew Ehrenberg was the biggest brain in marketing today, but he said that after he'd retired.
Yeah, in his castle in France where he was living, but but it still makes for a lot of joyful reading, especially the non-book where they put together all his quotes and speeches and other stuff. It's highly advisable to read.
Yeah, it was right.
But I do wonder, if you would have never gone to the Ehrenberg-Bass Institute, what would you be doing today?
Oh gosh, I don't know. Don't know. As I say, I fell into, I woke up. I mean, I remember over the day realizing suddenly, because I didn't want to be an academic, and then I found myself being an academic, and I was like, well, at least I'm a business academic. And then realizing one day, oh, I guess I'm a scientist. Oh, wow. I never thought I'd end up here.
Yeah.
Well, how strange.
Doubt.
But I remember showing Andrew Ehrenberg something. It was something about I think it was a duplication coefficient. I was showing across a whole lot of data, and I was saying it's amazing how close they all are to one. And Andrew said to me, "See, you don't have to go and looking at planets and things to find beautiful simplicity things about the world.
Repetitive patterns.
Science is a great invention that humans came up with. It took us a long time, but eventually we got there. But this idea, there is still this weird belief that science can only be physics and chemistry, and that's nonsense. I mean, science is just a scientific method. You can study anything so long as it's in the real world. It's not much use it's not theology. You can't study ghosts.
No, that's pretty hard. Although I'm sure there are many people trying that as well, but not with the results we probably want to have.
Yeah.
If you
they've tried to detect ghosts and things.
Yes. I still love the videos where you see people on YouTube trying to explain the Earth is flat and then accidentally proving with some shades of light that the Earth is not flat. I can really enjoy those. I can really enjoy those things. If you look at the early papers, or maybe from the Ehrenberg-Bass, or maybe just before that, what's one that sort of stands out to you that you were really amazed by or influenced by?
Gosh, well, we survey our new marketing scientists coming in, people who have done undergraduate degree and the bridging program coming into doing their masters by research. And we ask them what of our discoveries are the most surprising to you. And the one that comes up there, interestingly, is that brand user profiles don't differ very much. That if you've got competitive brands, then they sell to pretty much the same sort of people. I mean, they're very different people, but each brand's customer base has that same heterogeneity of, it has men, it has women, it has maybe children or whatever, but it has the same sort of skews that any other brand has. And it's interesting that's held up as one of the, that surprises people the most. I mean, because it was actually found even before us, there'd been things. So it was this delightful study of personality profiles of US car buyers, because in the 1950s, I think it was, and it was viewed that cars were really symbolic and really reflected the sort of person, and found that actually when you did personality tests and things, they all, each brand had pretty much the same sort of. They were all the same. They were Americans. You sell to Americans, and. Yeah, it's amazing. These things were sort of, they were found, and then all the textbook writers just, well, that's unusual. I better ignore that.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's much easier than asking the question, okay, why is that? Is there some sort of, what's behind all of this?
Yeah.
Then
why? Yeah. Or why am I doing? I just moved from one brand of General Motors to another brand. Why am I doing another piece of market research to try to work out who my buyer is? And this is saying they're just Americans.
Yeah. Well, that makes it also relatively easy. But I think it's the acceptance of, and I think we'll dive into that in a bit. But before doing what I do now, I worked as a CMO for 2 companies, and I think the first time I got the double jeopardy law and dived into it and understood it really well, that was also like, okay, so that actually, right, that I'm getting a lot of renewals as a telco brand is partially just not because of me and my work, but just because of the sheer size that I have, right? And I think a couple of those insights deliver. I think if you do it well, that's where you have the value from all these findings.
Yeah, they do actually have really profound implications for practice, which I don't think were it did take quite a long time to realize. I said our first sort of report for sponsors, which was written by, it was supposed to be a landmark report. It was written by Andrew Ehrenberg, Mark Uncles, and Cheryl Goodhart, and it was on Dirichlet type patterns, and including double jeopardy. And it's sort of embarrassing when when the section of like, what does all this mean? There's almost nothing there. It's like, oh, well, you could use this for benchmarking. Well, and so we issued that about, I think the year was sort of 2000. So I guess it was being written in the late 90s. And it just shows how far we've come. And that if we'd never release that now, it'd be like, no, there's so many implications, but we didn't know how to, they hadn't been thought through. Andrew used to say this, the D in R&D takes a lot longer. You discover something, you're like, oh, that's interesting. I wonder if it holds here. Oh, it does too. Oh, wow, that's interesting. I wonder if it holds. Oh, God, it does. Wow, that's really interesting. Right, what does it mean? Oh, probably, I'm not sure. That takes quite a long time to work out. What does it mean? And then how would you tell people? And how would you tell them to change their practice because of that? That takes a long time. So I think How Brands Grow, the book, was that was a real that showed we'd come quite a long way in the 10 years from 2000 to 2010, and I'd like to think we've come a long way in the last 15 years too.
Yeah, I think you've single-handedly, in the Ehrenberg-Bass Institute, had a major impact. I think the biggest in terms of marketing branding. I still think that the D is work in progress, because I think and it might be a nice segue into the next question. You can still hear marketeers talk about a loyalty in certain ways. I think we all agree that it's a byproduct of the scale that you can have, and might be interesting as the question: what sort of FMCG or what category sort of surprised you most by also obeying that law?
Surprised me most. If you go back and you look at the history of the big brands of the world, you see that they comply very well. And some of their founders sort of seem to intuitively really get this. I mean, they probably had the advantage that they'd never gone to university and studied marketing. So they had
new advantage. Yeah.
Yeah. So, some of the early people like, the Mars brothers and things, they, and the guy, Wrigley, I suppose, from Wrigley, they understood that, you had to, it's like, salespeople getting on wagons going west, right? Why are you going west? Well, there's people there.
Yeah.
There's people I don't sell to yet. And they really realized that they had to get mental and physical availability. That said, I'm increasingly of the view that with today's modern sophisticated marketers, that they, too many people go, oh yeah, mental and physical availability. Yep. Got it.
Yeah. And that's
it's
it.
like, well, you haven't.
No.
But you haven't.
No.
Because then why are you doing this?
I think it reminds me of a story of Freddie Heineken, the Heineken founder.
Mm-hmm.
Just going to the US, he spent the majority of his time going to bars in New York, ordering Heineken. And all the people said, we don't have Heineken. And then 2 weeks later, he did it several times. And then 2 weeks later, one of his sales guys came in and said, we have a new beer from Europe. Would you want to get a couple of cases? And then the bar salespeople was, oh, well, yes, we had a couple of people asking for it, right? So I think it's the way to go.
Yeah. Ah, lovely. He built mental availability, and then he followed up very quickly to convert that into physical.
It's a way to do it, and I think it's. But I agree.
Jim Cook is the chair of our US advisory board, and he founded Boston Beer Company, and he's the first CEO I ever met that like when I arrived, like he waved his mobile phone at me and went, "Yep, I've got the Ehrenberg-Bass app on my phone."
That's a good welcome.
Yeah, it was. But he could, well, he could see the relevance in his business, but he said he had a eye-opening moment one day when he realized he was spending more on advertising than he was on hops for his beer. And he thought, I know about making beer. I don't know much about advertising.
Wow. Yeah.
So, and so that's when he started to reach out. I need to find the best brains to know about advertising. And he unfortunately had John Philip Jones nearby, and so he spoke to him. And I guess John told him to speak to us as well.
We did a bit of an inventory in terms of Dutch CMOs to see if they had any questions. And one of the questions was, if you get more subscriptions, right, which a lot of companies are moving to, does this sort of bend or break the 50-20 rule?
Well, in a subscription model, assuming there's like basically one's, Netflix, they do have different grades, but then, yeah, you move from a repertoire type market to a subscription type market, then all your customers are just equal, basically, they're all worth the same. And then you get a very severe example of, penetration is king, because the only way you grow is you need more subscribers. There was this sort of view that the world was going to go to, subscriptions all over the place, but it doesn't seem to be that. Like, even in areas like dog food, which that looked like, ideal. It's heavy. The dog eats pretty much the same amount each week, so it should be really ideal. You can, just have a subscription, gets delivered every week. It's a tiny part of the market, and even people who subscribe, right, who have a dog food subscription, they seem to still buy dog food in regular stores as well. Yeah, it's weird, isn't it? The real world is weird. Consumers, well, I think the explanation is a lot of times we thought this was a solution as marketers. This is great, but a lot of consumers were like, that's a solution to, I don't have, it's not a problem.
No.
I go to the supermarket anyway. I don't need to have a subscription for light bulbs. Like, and also it increased. I mean, I have a little note on my phone called subscriptions, which tells me, all the insurance subscriptions I've got, TV subscriptions, because it's really easy to lose track of them, and they just keep billing you. So that causes a degree of mental stress, so I think
subscription fatigue, I think, is a part of the term they already use there. It's like, okay,
right, yeah,
too much, right? I'd rather pay once for software than keep on paying every week again for something new.
Yeah, I think some people actually start to go, no, I do not want another subscription.
Yeah,
even if you're offering me a discount, saying it could be easy. No, I do not want another subscription that I have to keep track of. Yeah.
The interesting part is to see that they are slowly moving back to things like ad-supported models. If you look at the Netflix for a light,
we've known this. So the Ehrenberg-Bass Institute has quite a history in studying media and TV back when it was big, and companies, the big TV channels and things. Whenever they did research on this, it always showed that was the preferred model that consumers wanted. And if you look around the media world, that is the most sustainable model, is where people pay, but they don't pay the full price. It's ad supported. That is, newspapers, magazine, almost every media eventually settled down to that model.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I think so. Magazines is the same thing. I have a subscription, but still I get a lot of ads. It's interesting.
Yeah.
It's an interesting model.
And would you like to pay double and not have the ads?
No. Probably not. Probably not. No. Probably not. So I'm good where if it's not too inconvenient, then I think it's acceptable.
Yes. So I think we'll see that for all the TV, and interesting for marketers. TV is going to be the hot new media.
Yeah.
Once it becomes advertising supported.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of we do quite a lot of tests in there, and then we also have sometimes questions, and we ask clients like, how much of YouTube is currently being watched on a TV? And then people go like, yeah, it's 5 or 10%. And we go like, no, it's almost half. Especially the younger generation. My daughter, they just go to their environment and then they look at YouTube, but it's on TV. That's interesting. Yeah, and it's also ad supported.
Yeah. Oh, it's the biggest ad-supported TV station in the world. You know, it is the first global TV station, and it's always been ad-supported.
Yeah. And I think that's what they gives them a bit of a head start if you compare them to the Netflix, because they have to add all the ad-supported stuff in there. But maybe it's an interesting question then. If you look at most of those channels, target a specific type of audience. My daughter watches horse riding video type of stuff. How do you look at things like reach there? Because reach, now if you have your World Soccer Championships, everybody's going to be there, or your big campaigns. These are smaller, right? In terms of reach. How do you look at that in terms of trying to? Do you just bundle all of those smaller channels and then create reach by combining it?
Yeah, it's possible, but yes, but it's the modern world is much more complicated for marketers. I mean, many of us grew up in cities where there was like one big newspaper. Like, wow, one, and pretty much probably didn't reach all the population, but it probably reached almost daily about half the population. Wow. Most media landscapes now are much, much more fragmented. I mean, they collectively reach everyone, but it's a lot more fragmented. So that makes it harder for marketers. And it's particularly hard for B2B marketers, who pretty much have, there's nothing like any of the old traditional TV or newspapers or anything has never existed for B2B. Had to use like salespeople, really expensive media.
Yeah, it's a very expensive medium, and you're not sure if it always works. So that's also a challenge.
You have to go to industry shows. You have to do sponsorship. It's hard, but if marketing were easy, anyone could do it.
Well, I think probably in some companies. I mean, we had a discussion a while back in a panel, and there was like a lot of people, if they're in HR and they really like communication stuff and ads, they jump on and they get a job at marketing. And so it also sometimes feels like you can get that, or you can do that if you get knee surgery, right? Someone from HR, you probably don't want to have knee surgery, but somehow it's easier to do that with marketing, or we have a less of a requirement there.
Yeah, and I think that's wrong, but well, in today's world that is wrong, but maybe in the past it wasn't so much, because we didn't actually, in a university marketing degree, we didn't teach a lot, and a lot of the stuff that we taught could be picked up on the job. So whereas that's not true for, well, once upon a time that was true for medicine. but
thank God we evolved.
Yes, but it isn't today. So I think the same for marketing. I'll tell a funny story, but I won't name the name. But just before COVID hit, I was introduced to the brand new CMO of a very big consumer goods brand in the US. And he'd just been briefed 2 days before, because I was coming, on how brands grow and some of the laws of growth. And I thought, you've just been briefed. You got this job without knowing that. Wow. And I thought, quite realistically, in 20 years' time, people would go, no, what? No, you couldn't get a job like that, and that would be nuts. Right? And so, the world is changing.
Yeah. I'm probably guilty of that myself. If I go back a while, in my first CMO role, which was B2B, but still was very much driven by an understanding of digital and digital sales and online funnels and that type of stuff. So I think my
yeah, I got a job as an academic teaching, out of Kotler.
Yeah, but I think it's if you're curious. So I started doing tests with Erasmus University on how the brain responds to ads, because that at least gave me a bit of an understanding of eye tracking and attention. And then once you go there, then you become more interested, and then sort of you fill in the gap and you start to read the books. But still, it's I think it's still a challenge for a lot of marketeers that they have limited knowledge about this. And
remember, it took doctors 100 years to start washing their hands.
Yeah, true. Yeah, I think we're probably in that stage then, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
People discovered. I mean, they actually did a randomized controlled trial and discovered that if you gave sailors lemon juice, they didn't get scurvy, and then they just went, "Nah, it can't be true,"
Yeah.
and ignored it for another decade.
Well, I see some interesting parallels there.
Yeah. So Andrew Ehrenberg once said to me, "We should never be surprised that people are slow to learn things. We should be amazed that human beings, unlike virtually any other animal on the planet, actually does learn things."
I think that's
we get there. We get there in the end.
Yeah, but I think if you look at what really triggered me many years ago was the look at distinctive assets as a driver, and also not you don't have to be extremely special, but make sure you stand out. Can you share like a campaign that you loved purely for that? Let's say for it the way it handles or handled the distinctive assets.
Well, I don't know. I don't. I'm just an everyday consumer. Right? I don't really study what's happening in the advertising world, other than the ads I see. And so the one that comes to mind when you ask that is I've got some slides that show that people can. It's one of the lessons I have that in advertising you should be humble and expect fleeting exposures, because that's sometimes you get better, right? Sometimes people watch for a bit longer, but outside of a movie theater, you have to pretty much assume fleeting exposures. But I say, but the good news is you can actually get an ad can reach people's memory and be processed and make them laugh and things in very short exposures. And so I'd flash on the screen some ads, and a number of them from McDonald's, like it has the box with a burger and it's flipped up, but it has someone's hands on it, and it has like free Wi-Fi, and it makes the box look like it's a laptop, and just like bang, that's so fun, right? They're playing with the distinctive assets, and using that as a very fast way of triggering memory. So you go, oh, free Wi-Fi at McDonald's, you can process that so quickly. Distinctive assets really help. It's not something we thought about when we first came up with it, but it does actually help you process advertising faster. Yeah, distinctive assets are probably the least controversial thing the Ehrenberg-Bass Institute's released. So lately I'm noticing all these people saying, oh yeah, I've known that for years. You're like, really? Did you? Yeah. Well, then can you show me somewhere where you wrote about that or something? And because I got some research assistants to do reviews of things like marketing magazines and stuff, and branding textbooks. There is a mention that we mentions like brand colors and logos and characters, and they're very important.
Period.
Yeah, that's it. Like, what does that mean? Or worse, actually, some say because colors have psychological effects, and you're like, no, that's not it. That's not the reason. No. So yeah, it's interesting. And so we came at that because it came out of a presentation. I used to have a presentation that said branding is important, but not for the reasons you think.
Yes.
And it was to show that yes, brands are important because they compete pretty much head on. You've got these polygamously loyal, pretty uninterested, not caring, not falling in love. Yeah, and that makes brands very important. So it's the opposite of the brands are important because deep emotional attachments and people fall. And that led to the thing of saying that. So brand equity is not building this amazing emotional connection. Brand equity is looking like you, so the people who have you in their repertoire can buy you again because they go, there's my brand, right? Is it good? Well, it must be. It's one of my brands.
Yeah. After you bought it already, you become a happy camper. Yeah, I think it's
but to buy it again, you have to get it in their heads, and you have to stay looking like that.
yeah. Now, I think I have one piece of research we did many years ago where we tried to see if people would see the brand in the ad, right? Sometimes that works, right? The eye tracking crosses the brand, sometimes it doesn't. And what I remember from that study is that there were two ads everybody could recall, everybody, even though the eye tracking didn't, cross the brand. And those were two ads that had a very distinctive look. One was I think it was I'm a guy on the horse. It's like a shampoo.
The Procter and Gamble.
Yeah. And the other one was a Red Bull ad. Gives me wings, because the pure signature of the ad alone instantly triggers the associations of I don't have to see it. It's been there for 20 years. It probably will be there for 20 years more. So those are really strong.
Yeah. Red Bull have been a sponsor of the Institute, I think, for 20 years, and they're very disciplined. They work really hard with media to get in front of people, but they always look like Red Bull.
Yeah, I think it's much harder to do and to keep that consistency over time, and in a company than is probably being accounted for, because everybody wants to do something new or something different and change.
And it's doubly hard if you don't know that's what you are supposed to do, right? In the sense that you don't. Paul Michaels, the first non-family member who became president of Mars, came from marketing, and he sort of made his fame in the company, I think, in the 1980s when he brought the M&M's characters back, because someone had decided to stop using them.
Yeah.
And you think, oh, that's nuts, right? I mean, why would you ever stop using M&M's characters? Yes. But the problem is they were thought of at that time in Mars as creative devices, optional. Use them if you want. Dear agency, we've got these creative devices. You can use those unless you come up with something else.
Use something.
Rather than distinctive assets, you must use them. They're not optional. We don't run ads for M&Ms that don't have the M&Ms characters, right? That's just, we do not. And so when you realize that, when you realize they have financial value in their assets, and that's what does the branding, then the consistency becomes a lot easier.
Yeah, I agree. Is there anything, because I remember writing 2 books on how brands grow, I was really impressed by, I think, Jenny saying that when you started looking at the second book, I think if I understood it right, it was like, can we see in emerging markets if brands do things differently there? And it turned out that it was exactly the same as in the other markets. So with that, probably also being an institute, you get new data, you get new findings, and etc. Is there something that now maybe that didn't exist in 2010, and you would have added like a new data set or something that you would have added to the book if you were writing it now?
Yes. To my embarrassment, it seems obvious now, but I didn't talk about overlap in physical and mental availability. That's a bit of an omission. It matters how much mental availability you've got and how much physical availability, but the overlap matters almost just as much, particularly if you're a small brand. If you're a very big brand, like very high market share, you're probably going to get overlap, quite a lot of it, just unavoidably. But if you're small and you're a startup, it's very possible that you can have very little overlap, and it doesn't work unless there's overlap. So that was definitely an omission. Talking about small brands, full stop, talking about portfolio management, talking about some of the more managerial things that you have to do inside your company to embed evidence-based marketing. These are all things that we're currently working on and currently writing. Stay tuned. There will be coverage of this. We've been doing our category growth. I mean, there's lots of things that sponsors of the Ehrenberg-Bass Institute should know about, but haven't reached the public domain yet.
Oh, that's very interesting. Also, I think we discussed this once or twice through LinkedIn, but there's a lot of attention nowadays on the subject of attention. I think you rightfully pointed out, is especially by companies that are providing services in this field.
Funny that.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's weird. You never see that. Actually, a lot of push by driving it to become sort of a media standard and measurement standard. I really liked your point about attention is not so important, but inattention is. I think you also did some nice work with research in this quite recently. What's your view on that?
Well, yeah, there's quite a lot of academic studies on attention, and inattention is particularly something we need to know about. Like, are we paying for ads that don't actually appear on the screen or aren't seen by consumers? Yeah, that advertising avoidance. It's what it used to be called. It's probably a bit of a overactive term, right? I mean, people, no, some people do actively go out of their way to avoid the ads, but there's also a lot of ads that we can avoid really easily without having to almost do anything. And so we need to understand that as marketers. After that, there's not a lot that we need to understand. I mean, we just need to be realistic and go, not everyone's going to watch the whole ad. Does it still work in the first few seconds? Does the brand in the first few seconds? Can we, let's just be humble and go, we don't want, if half the exposures are less than 5 seconds, then we either throw out, they're just worthless, or we make sure that that first 5 seconds does have some branding and it can work. Yeah, what people don't, needless to say, the media companies don't say when they say, oh, we can give you, more attention, is they don't say, oh, and we will charge you a lot more for it.
You'll find out one way or the other.
Yeah, later. And it is very expensive. If you say, okay, say you do it, you get a distribution, you go, half of all that ad only sees 3 seconds, what do I have to pay to ensure that the minimum is like 7 seconds? The increase in price is astonishing because it's very, very hard for the media to deliver that. How do you stop someone, flicking up the screen fast?
I think you'll be able to stop them anytime soon. So.
No. So my view is we just have to understand the world we live in. And what's the expression? You cut your cloth to suit the something.
I know. Yeah, I think that is an interesting statement.
I mean, if you really want people to watch for 30 seconds, well, then you're going to have to buy ads in cinema.
Yeah, and I think in cinema, at least what you can see in some of the data is you're exposed to it. You're sitting there, you have your bag of popcorn and your M&Ms, and then
that's a big screen.
Yeah, it's hard to avoid it, but I think the moment it becomes smaller and smaller, you skip it away easier. I'm interested in, okay, let's say you have X number of seconds of attention. How much of that is actually, what do you pay per second of genuine attention? It's an interesting question, right? Compared to all these CPM type of metrics.
Look, let's not get too distracted by media metrics. The key thing is we need to reach people's brains, right? We need to leave memory traces or fresh memory traces. The good news is we don't have to do a lot in that area, right? If we understand category entry points, if we understand the very simple memory structures we want to build, they're not rocket science. We don't need, who was that? The physicist you mentioned earlier. Is it Tyson? Neil
Tyson.
Yeah, we don't need someone like that to give an hour lecture on our brand.
No,
that's the good news. And so it's still possible.
He probably could do it well because he's very interesting, simple way, and I think one of my favorite quotes from his is science works whether you like it or not. I think that's a good that's a good one.
The good news is we don't have to build and refresh a lot of complexity. Most things that people are going to find out about the brand, they'll find out about when they actually use it. So that makes it, that then we can go, okay, right. We can deal with this limited attention world.
Yeah. one of the questions I still had is there's a lot of people that, so I find it interesting that the marketing industry has a tendency to say person A versus person B. There's a lot of, we don't look at what we jointly sort of can agree on, but we tend to want to have the Ritson versus lesbianet or other things type of discussions. Is there, what's the, and obviously being I think the biggest name in the industry, you get a lot of that maybe unwanted attention. So instead of looking at, okay, we have some longitudinal studies that show that attitudes sometimes predict a little bit sales, yes or no, and we have a discussion on the data, we tend to make it into more of a ad hominem type of approach.
Yeah, I think humans tend to do that. It also creates some drama. Mark Ritson's, quite, blatant about it, that he says, I'll position myself against the brand in order to, it's good advertising. It's good. It's good marketing. I suppose what you're alluding to is it's annoying when people just simplistically go, oh, I've heard there's people who disagree with Ehrenberg-Bass, so maybe I don't have to look at it anymore.
or use the institute as a segue to get promotional for their paper or that type of stuff.
Well, yeah, sure. There's people who do that, but I think the worry is then that people go, oh yeah,
I don't have to do it.
Yeah, well, actually, I met someone at Cannes who said this. Right, he's a very bright guy, but he's very blunt. And he said,
"Is he Dutch?"
No, he's not. I'm not going to give it away, but he said, can be idiots. I was like, oh, they're not all idiots. There's some very bright Americans who, I was talking to this CMO and he was saying this, and I mean, wait on, have you read How Brands Grow? He said, oh, I know of it, but I don't really subscribe to that. Went, well, what do you mean you don't subscribe? It's not religion. It's just facts. And so I suppose there is the worry that some people go, I've heard there's dispute over that, and it just allows them to not do any thinking. Which is dangerous. So you mentioned the Cohen-Powell's article. Yeah, I think that was I think some people, which I think might have been Mark actually, it's not one of his best articles. He sort of said, oh, this shows attitudes predict behavior. Well, actually, if you read the article, it shows you get a bit better model fit if you throw a whole lot more variables in, which I think most of us who have had any statistical training know that that's pretty hard to avoid. But if you look at the attitude variables, the big one that does the heavy lifting is some awareness variables. Oh, yeah. So I don't think I've ever said that mental availability is not important. Right?
No.
Yeah, but so it's very easy for people to go on a glib headline and not read the actual work.
Yeah. Despite all the efforts, and I think a lot of the marketeers in our industry work on, things like brand love somehow still refuse to slowly or directly die. Sometimes even
die. I think it is dying. I think it is dying.
We're getting there. We're getting there.
Yeah. Well, I think what you're getting is more sort of a brand love light now, right? People go, I know people. Yeah, okay, I know there's weirdos like so Don Gorski, the guy's eaten 20,000 Big Macs and things. But I now know that they're very rare and weird, and my normal consumers don't fall in love with me. But we're still looking to get and they use terms like trust or emotional connection, or I was at a conference in Sydney recently. It was all for email marketers. I had to mock them when they stop talking about building relationships with consumers because you've sent them 14 emails this week. That's not a relationship, okay?
If there is one, it's probably a one that's very annoyed.
Yes. Did we ever? I mean, it's very weird that we actually believed that, right? Like, we would justify, so we're going to retarget people because they've, they went to our website once. We're going to retarget this to build a stronger relationship. It's Oh, it's just going to annoy them.
Yeah.
But it might get them to buy one more time, or it might get them to go back and not forget that shopping cart that they had half full. Yeah, sure, but it's not. Let's not pretend we're doing it for altruistic relationship building reasons.
Or they will buy the product because they would have bought the product anyway, and we just attribute it to the mailing that we just send them, right? See that.
Oh.
Okay, so let's assume I'm a CMO and I got the position, just like your American friend. And instead of waiting until you drop by, I'm going to read the book. So if I have a small pot or a small amount of budget to prove that How Brands Grow works next quarter, where should I go? What should I do?
Well, you could just come to the Ehrenberg-Bass Institute, and we'll do. No, it's a classic thing that we do for people. Is we call it a laws of growth analysis, and we say, okay, other than us just turning up and saying, there are these laws, etc. We'll do some analysis on data, and when we stand up and do this as independent experts, we will put up slides that have your brands on them, and that's obviously a lot more persuasive for people. But I mean, obviously, it depends on how easy it is to get the data and how big your budget is. In a lot of cases, this is not actually that difficult. Once you know what you're looking for, right? Like you want to know, is it really double jeopardy? Do we have double jeopardy in our? You can do that with a simple survey. You might not be able to get repeat purchases, but you might be able to just get their last 2 purchases, and you can calculate metrics off that. You might ask them which brand they're most likely to buy next time, and you can use that as a proxy. I mean, you can use quite cheap survey things and show, and I guarantee it'll come up looking something pretty close to it. Even if it's got a small sample size, a bit of wobble and things, you'll still go, oh, wow, yeah, the main thing's there.
We have it also. Huh?
Yeah.
You also run, I think you've just done one in Bordeaux. It's one of the things that I wish I'd done when I was at KPN a long time ago. You run How Brands Grow for Executives.
The live, yes, yeah. This is
what is that about? We do this
in-house. It's an executive development course. I mean, it comes from an in-house thing that we do with sponsors, which is 2-ish days where the whole team is together. And this is a different version because it runs sort of over. It starts in the evening it sort of runs over 4 days, because it's different because all the people around the table are coming from all sorts of different industries, so you get a lot more questions because say you're doing it for a bank, and then someone asks, can you show me data on banking? Does this apply to banking? That person, the 30 other people in the room also had that same question, so you handle it once. But when you've got a room of diverse people, someone will go, well, wait on, what about luxury and what about durables and so you get a lot more questions. So it's a different experience, but it's the same. You get to learn from probably I noticed in Bordeaux, the only demographic thing that was similar is that pretty much everyone in the room had like 20 years experience in marketing. So that they were all from different industries, different countries, different, lots of diversity, but they were all pretty senior people.
And if I'm more junior and I find it interesting, so I buy the books, but is there any place that you could say, well, just go to the online training, or what are the options that I have as a marketeer?
Well, I really encourage, the books are cheap, right? Buy the books, read them. Yeah, but there's also a lot of resources. I mean, hopefully people will be listening to this podcast, and there are other podcasts, and follow us on LinkedIn, and there's quite a lot of resources out there. And then try to get a job inside a company that sponsors the Ehrenberg-Bass Institute, and then you get access to all the data.
Well, that's a great way to slowly round things up. I have one. Well, it's a memory related question. We do some research in my company also to how people memorize things and how the brain responds to certain stimuli. And I've been looking at research from a guy called Charang Ranganath. He's a professor at in California, and he mainly looks at dynamic memory. He runs the dynamic memory lab there, and one of the things that he shows is that our brains sort of timestamp multisensory details and link them sort of together as a memory point. And when I was reading that, I thought, well, actually, if you think about the category entry point, right? I think something very, something that I like very much. It feels a lot like tiny situational cues that can pull a brand out of memory. And I was wondering, have you ever looked at that from an Ehrenberg-Bass Institute perspective to study how those brands build those, let's say, multisensory CEPs over time?
Not so much. Well, we have a bit, but it keeps on coming up that humans are very visual, right? I mean, then evolutionary psychologists say the same thing. We are we have a pretty rubbish sense of smell. Our hearing is not even that good. But I mean, we have these other senses, but wow, we are very, very visual. So that's probably the main thing. But you're right, it is quite fascinating how we screen some things out and see other things. And that is because of memory.
Yeah.
Once upon a time, which you can't remember, when you were really little, when you saw writing and things, it was just nothing. You didn't see it, right? And then when you're about 5 years old, you learned to read, and now you cannot help yourself, right? You read stuff so fast, and that's a memory task, right? The information comes in through your eyes, and it has to be processed by memory. That's what that word is, and that's what it means. And it's done super fast. And, there's the famous ad, right, from outdoor media, unsee this.
Yeah.
You can't. Don't read this. Oh, I can't.
Already did it.
Yeah.
I think that when the ad people have empty shelf space, they put your ad could have been here. And a lot of the times you don't see it, but every time you see it, you're directly triggered that like it could have worked.
Yeah. So that is quite fascinating. So that's language. We understand that. But then branding, the distinctive assets is very like that.
Yeah, I think I like the quote, we do not see the world as it is, but we see the world as we are, right? And that's because we've been trained, we have all this memory stuff. But I was very much intrigued by my initial thoughts were that I have a memory and it sort of stays the same and I retrieve it and that's how memory works. But the more I dive into it, you put that memory together every time you get it in, you put it back, and some small cues can sort of apparently timestamp it. And then I thought, okay, that's exactly what happens when I'm in the store. Just go for my standard brand. I'll pick it out of the...
Yeah, well, there's a sort of a counting mechanism. I mean, I don't mean literally in that you can say I have had 17 exposures to that and something, but it's how we tell familiarity. Why does that feel more familiar to you than that? And it's because of the counting mechanism ahead that allows us to detect familiarity. And there's very good survival benefits of that, right? So you walk into a forest and you just suddenly go, something's different. It does not matter for you to be able to work out what's different, like the birds aren't so loud or whatever. What's important is that you detect very quickly it's slightly off the familiar. Yeah. It's not what it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
And that tells you that maybe there's a lion around the corner or something, and therefore the monkeys aren't chattering or something like that. So that kept us alive. And also familiarity. Like imagine, you're an Aboriginal in Australia. There are no maps. There are no signs. You really are super navigating by, well, no, I didn't know. I didn't come this way. I didn't come this way before, right? Being able to detect familiarity. And that is And so our brains are doing that in the background
Yeah.
all the time, counting.
Yeah.
And it's partly why people like that they feel safe and trustworthy in buying a brand that they've come across many times.
Yeah.
Whether that's buying or seeing advertising or whatever, it still builds the same thing. I think I might have mentioned, if a salesperson says someone's in a store and they're asking something, and a salesperson mentions a particular brand, and the buyer replies, "Oh yeah, I've heard of that," or "Oh yeah, I saw that on something." That is a positive. That is actually a very positive statement, isn't it? They're saying that must be good. That must be good. Any salesperson knows that's a buying signal.
Yeah. Yeah, and even but what I really took away from your book also when looking at data of product introductions, where if they have it, they buy it, but if your packaging changes, your assets are gone, and I see something else, and I also like that jam. From now on, that's my jam. I lose 15% of my share, because I screwed up the packaging. So yeah, it's I think it's just like in science, right? Strong opinions, loosely held. I have a strong preference, but if there's something else, I'm gone in.
People don't even know they've bought a different brand because they do buy different brands.
So we know what's important, right? That's a good way to round things up. Well, thank you for your time. I think it's we'll turn it into a very nice recording.
Lovely chat.
Lovely chat. And so we'll thank you for this. Thank you for having us here, and enjoy your stay in Italy.
Okay, I can take my tie off now.
Yeah.